so excited for this conversation today. I got introduced to Robin through one of my favorite professors from Kellogg, Jose Liberte, and I've learned a lot. And having that relationship in place means a lot. Robin, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be heading towards that end goal, but at the same time, it's kind of bittersweet because it's been incredible and met some of the most amazing people in my life. So, yeah, good though.
That last quarter is so much fun, and then we had a reunion pretty quickly thereafter. And it's once you're part of the Kellogg community, you're part of the Kellogg community. You and I are in a pretty narrow group
Yes.
in terms of Kellogg that doesn't come from banking or healthcare or consulting. We both come from construction, blue collar, but that's probably a great way for us to jump in. Your LinkedIn tagline is one of my favorite that I've ever seen. Blue collar, fluent, border trained. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and where you are today.
I started very much, nerd, band geek, pretty much as far that direction as you could go. Like I went to Double Reed Camp, which is the nerdiest of band camps. And then I went to Reed College, which is also a very, very nerdy, hippy dippy school. And then I ended up kind of in construction on accident. As part of a family business, I started as a bookkeeper and then ended up getting my real estate license and helping with the property management aspect in real estate and construction because we also did the repairs and renovations on the apartment complexes. And then I got out of it for a while. I went into the MMA scene, owned a gym. But when I moved to Florida, I didn't really have a network again. And I went back into the construction space and was not expecting this as we both worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. One of the things I took from it that I loved was everybody starts on the ground floor. Like you show up out of college and you're washing cars and you really understand the operations. And that was something that I really felt like I was missing when I was running that construction company. So when I moved to Florida, which roofing in Florida is not very, it's weird. It's fun, but it's also terrible. And then that's how I got into the safety space and went back eventually into project management. So that's kind of where I've headed to now is kind of a nice mix between the office and the field. But what I love about it and kind of bringing it back to that blue collar fluent boardroom change is with my education, with my background, but I also, have been in the field. And so I have a much better understanding of what's actually happening, which is good operationally speaking, but also gives you a lot more empathy. And it's easier to connect with everybody that way because you understand what's happening and their struggles.
Number one, the fact that we're an enterprise alum together. If you can sell rental car insurance, you can sell anything. I worked at Enterprise well before they acquired National and Alamo. In Greenville, South Carolina, I had to wear a white shirt every day and a tie. And I sweat through so many dress shirts, washing out a Chevy Impala to
Yep.
sell full boat and get it out the door for someone. The part that you kind of glanced over is the transition into MMA. Athletes do so well in business, being part of a team, setting goals, executing against those goals. I'd love to kind of just double click on that piece in specific, your OSHA certifications, the safety piece, and how that's become such an important foundation for you as you've launched more of a successful portion of your career being in construction management and increasing roles and responsibilities.
I'm actually incredibly grateful for the years I spent in safety. It changes your perspective on what's important. And I was really lucky that I didn't see anything horrible firsthand. It's kind of funny, especially now, people would be probably shocked to hear that I was a little shy when I was younger, even though like I played rugby and I did MMA, but I really am conflict averse. I don't like actually, fighting with people. But I think what really drove it home for me was safety and recognizing that if I wasn't willing to have those hard conversations and change behavior when it was necessary, that I could leave a situation where somebody ended up dying. And I never wanted that on my conscience. You need to be willing to have those hard conversations. It is your responsibility. I view it much more as a coaching role. And like, these are my people, and I care about my people. And I'm here to facilitate them doing their work in a good way.
Going off of that foundation and focusing on the OSHA certifications, how then did you kind of pair that with making the decision to pursue your MBA? That wasn't something you needed to do. You actively chose to do that.
I had planned to go to business school and I got into MIT and I was so excited. That was like my
Wow.
dream. And I had some family situations at the time, which made it where I wasn't going to be able to go. I would have had to leave my family, and my daughter was only 2. That was the right choice for her. And it was honestly one of the hardest decisions. I think it was the right decision, but it was heartbreaking for me. Very disappointing. That's when I transitioned to MMA and opened a gym. And I had a lot of great experiences after that. But it was always kind of one of those things where I was like, I really wish I'd had that opportunity. And so when I moved to Florida and I got to this space and my daughter's grown, I have time. I could get my MBA. And I had to go back and does this make sense anymore? And
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I was working at Minto at the time, which is an incredible company. And I reached out to their CEO, Michael Waters, who he went Wharton. And I was just like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. What are your thoughts? Is this a waste of my time just pursuing this old dream? It's like this ship has sailed. And we had a 30-minute conversation with me, giving me his advice on the situation. So I actually was planning to go to MIT because that was my dream. And then I started the admissions process with Kathy. And what I loved about Kellogg was their admissions process was so innovative in my point of view. Like they have consultants to help you put together your best application. So it's the whole idea is they're trying to put everybody on as level a playing field as possible. And I just really loved that idea. So that's what actually swayed me. I had my application all set. I never ended up sending it to anywhere else. I was like, this is where I want to go. So thank God I got accepted because I was not the most strategic.
Everything happens for a reason. I mean, you certainly talked about some great business schools there between Sloan and MIT and Wharton. Obviously, I'm biased, but I made the right choice there and you ended up where you're supposed to be. You kind of gave me flashbacks. I was working with Christine Post, who is unbelievable in the office there at Kellogg. She's another Kellogg alum. I probably was there just to fill a quota of kind of the non-banking consulting
Yeah.
background, but certainly happy that I went there. An MBA in construction is unusual.
Yes.
Being a woman in construction is unusual. Having that educational experience and being a woman puts you in unicorn status.
I think there's two sides to it. An important distinction is an executive MBA now.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that it worked out the way it did in some ways. But there's just having it on your resume, and then there's just the reality of what you've gained. And even that, I would break into two areas of like the network, people that are willing to go to bat for you because they know what you're capable of, which is awesome. Like you can't downplay that at all. And, or even like Jose, putting us in contact with each other. It's like,
Yeah.
because like you said, there's not a bunch of us in these programs. It is largely finance heavy. So I think that's incredible because there's not many people in the construction industry that have the same skill set or the same perspective. And I'd say that's the difference is I have worked with incredible people with varying educational degrees, but it's awesome to bring the skill sets that you take, especially from a Kellogg style program, which is very people oriented, and in construction the people are what make it. So I think that's incredibly valuable. As far as being a woman, it's definitely interesting, and I would say it's different being a woman coming from the field. Like I feel like my experience has been a lot of companies like, oh, we have so many women in our industry, and I'm like, well, what roles are they doing? It's like
Yeah.
you
Where
see.
are, where are,
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of them in support office roles, and not taking anything away from that. That's valuable, but that's very different than having women in your crew or women superintendents, women project managers, and there's still not very many of those. And I think there's advantages and disadvantages to that. I would say I think one of the advantages of it is EQ, which again Kellogg is very EQ centric, which again I think is a very big positive. As a woman, I think that's something that I bring to the construction industry, and it makes for a very good, positive cultural shift. And I've been very lucky to have a lot of support in it.
low ego, high impact for
Yep.
sure. And that's a great perspective. The previous organization that I led, we were about 50% female, but to the point, you see a lot of that in accounting. You see a lot of that in kind of marketing. The stat that keeps me up at night is for every 5 people in the field that retire, only 2 people are entering the field. And so we're in this kind of
Yeah.
downward trend of having enough kind of hands to do the work that we need to. And there's a stigma and there's a lack of awareness. And so we really got to kind of battle against that. And that's part of what I'm trying to address with the blue collar evangelist and these conversations is to shine a light on it and like, hey, it's okay to get your hands dirty,
Yeah, it's
literally
a
get your
great
hands
career.
dirty.
Like, I
Totally.
think that's what I was really disappointed about, that I wasn't aware sooner.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins said this, like, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. And I think we've historically done a very bad job of recruiting in this industry. There's this whole segment of women who didn't even know this was a viable career option for them. And not just women, like I would be hitting up like sports teams, like to your point, like I think that's really well suited toward the construction industry, and it's starting to change. There's still a stigma, but it's not what it was, and I think that's
You
a
know,
positive.
growing up, and whether it's middle school or high school, being over at some of my friends' houses and hearing their parents say, like, hey, you better study for that test and you better do well. Otherwise, you're going to become a garbage truck driver. You're going to become a roofer. You're going to become a plumber. I would be scared to death of is if I was just graduating law school right now or into these kind of entry level roles that are going to be displaced heavily by AI
Like data entry.
rather than, yeah. So, I mean, great segue. What advice would you give to an 18-year-old today?
Find at least one mentor. Having multiple is so valuable. And the reason I say that in my particular instance, my family like owned bookstores. We didn't know anything about corporate America. I had to figure out a lot of this myself, and it was messy. Just fell into construction. And when you talk to other successful, experienced people, one, a lot of them are incredibly kind and they want to help you. And I think people don't recognize how true that is. There's this concept that highly successful people don't have time for you. And that hasn't been my experience. And they can save you a lot of unnecessary pain, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. That would be my number one piece of advice.
I love that. It's time for you to pay it back
Yeah.
and be more of a mentor than a mentee. How do you want to be thought of by your teammates, both in the crew, in the office? I mean, how do you want people to really kind of think about you?
I was trying so hard to not make this cheesy and very Man of La Mancha-esque, and I've completely failed. So I'm just going to go with it, which is
Go with it.
I think doing the right thing is important, but I think it goes beyond that. I think it's being willing and not even just willing to champion the right thing. And so I am big on accountability, but that goes both ways. And so I'm hard on my people, but I'm just as hard about making sure that they're taken care of. And that's why I think that championing piece is so important.
I've noticed in our kind of conversation so far is it's clear you hold yourself to a very high standard. And to me, that's always one of the things that resonates most with a teammate is sometimes it's easier to kind of give the orders than to take the orders and make sure that that's a two-way street and that you have those feedback loops. I think is one of the things that really inspires me about you and getting to know you and your style.
Thank you.
Of course. As it comes to kind of your values, what's one value that's near and dear to you?
The most important value to me is integrity. And it's actually very selfish. And it's because, as you just pointed out, ironically, I'm very A personality. I'm very competitive. I'm very much like I want things done at a certain level. I want to be the best. And that puts a lot of pressure on myself and also on my team. And that can be a struggle. And that can also lead to when you experience failure in some form for you to be very hard on yourself and anxiety and fear and depression that can come with that. And so what I changed with my perspective is every day, whether it's in my personal life or my professional life, I try to do the very best I reasonably can with the information and the resources I have available. And not surprisingly, that leads to a lot of success, but there's still failures, no matter what. But as long as I follow with that level of integrity, it allows me to give myself and the people around me grace. And that has changed how I interact with the world. It's been incredibly valuable to me.
I love that. I mean, it's all about it's having appropriate expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things I went to a men's group in my church starting in COVID, and I need to find the time to be able to get back there. But one of the things that I really heard is you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. Right? It's the same reason when you're flying and they say, hey, if something happens and these oxygen masks come down, like Robin, I know you're going to want to help the people next to you. You got to help yourself first
Yep.
and then help them. It's, as leaders and organizations, your energy is very contagious. And so people are going to be looking like, I'm not a good example of it today, but do you look well rested? Do you look excited? Are you smiling? Is your shirt tucked in? Like those types of things that, I think it's important and critical. We could talk all night. You've been so generous with your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that Jose connected us. I'm not surprised that the way in which he described me as someone that struggled mightily in his M&A class. I would say I still got a high pass, so challenge to him. But I learned a lot in that class, and I continue to get blessings from that, including this introduction to you. So, Robin, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to staying in touch.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.